Dirk, I see that you've dialed in. We now make you to a speaker. Thanks for joining this session. And yeah, as always, if you're a pioneer, you need to have a certain sense of humor in order to, yeah, to live through these kind of sessions.
Of course.
So I hear you, great. And I see a presentation. So is it really you, Dirk?
It is really me, and it is really us. It is also with me here, Professor Rudy Aernoudt.
Great. So good to have you back from one session to the other. We changed a little bit the technology, but as we speak, more and more participants are logging in. This is a webinar session that allows people to interact with you. So if you, you have switched on the camera, and maybe you can at some point close the presentation and show yourself so people know that you're there. And secondly, to all the participants, if you like to interact, tell us, ask your questions in the chat, or if you want to be visible and ask the question in person, please indicate that, and so we can unmute, or better, how do you say that? Turn your camera on so you can really be seen. So this session is planned to go to 1:35. Dirk, we have discussed before that you wanted to first go a little bit more into details. That's why you have the presentation with you.
Yes.
And if you allow for questions at any time, you can both see the chat, and I'm gonna help if there is something that really fits to your statement. So once again, can you switch on the camera? So yeah, here we go. Perfect. There's
voila.
Brussels. Great. So
let's see. It's all improvising a bit.
I just, when we were waiting for you to dial in, I said, you need to have a certain sense of humor if you go fully digital. But people appreciate that we take the effort, that you take the effort, Rudy and Dirk, to really dial in from Brussels. And yeah, it's really, really great to have you now on the interactive session. And now, Dirk, floor is yours. You said you wanted to go a little bit more into details, and then we pick up the questions as they come along.
Yes, okay, thank you very much, Alexander. So welcome everyone to this session. I wanted to talk the people here present at the PropTech 2020 Germany about the importance of PropTech in Europe. But first of all, why is PropTech European priority? Because we have macroeconomic trends that put pressure on returns and efficiency. We have data technology driving new needs of end users, and digitizing is really something that's an important trend in real estate, because the industry is 217 trillion market, and it's one of the last, I think the last, to be really digitized. And then in the end, and we will talk about that with Professor Rudy Aernoudt, about the Green Deal, which is driving PropTech through Europe. In a general way of speaking, we have two trends that are impacting European PropTech. You have the global trends impacting real estate in a more general way, which are the climate change, rising urban development, we have aging of the population, and of course the complexity of building and construction projects that is increasing every year. And then the second set of trends that are impacting real estate are the technologies. We're talking about AI, BIM, IoT, blockchain, robotics, and such others. So basically, when you look at how innovation is driving PropTech or innovation in real estate, in Europe, we have two major drivers of innovation. That's user experience and efficiency. And you can see here the top 5 technologies for Europe that will be driving PropTech in the future. That's blockchain, 5G, AI, IoT, and VR, AR, where blockchain will help us to get more transparency, to bring financial stability, transaction valuations. We have 5G that will allow us to, for example, do workspace monitoring, and that will increase velocity. AI, which will lead to hyper-personalization and the democratization of data technology and intelligence, and like IoT, of course, and that's maybe the most important on this slide, is like IoT is making sure that the real estate of the future is and will be connected. Now,
Dirk, I have a quick question. Will you be able to share this presentation to the participants after the conference?
We will be able to share that after the conference. Yes, Alexander.
Because there's a lot of text, and some participants might want to go back. So For all the participants, you don't need to write all the details. Dirk is going to provide the information.
Absolutely. We're here to give a lot of information, and afterwards we will send a handout, as we always do, that you can distribute and that everyone can get.
Great, appreciate it.
Okay. So how is Europe preparing for the future? Let's see what's happening now. Well, you got 78% of companies that increase spending on PropTech solutions within the next 12 months, confirmed. I need to remind you that typically, for example, software companies, technology companies, they spend 10% of the revenue on research and development, innovation. In the real estate world, it's only 1%. And in the real estate industry services, there it's only 0.1%. So innovation spending needs to go up. Then only 58% of the real estate companies have a real digital strategy, although they have already hired senior employees to look at how to implement it. When you look specifically for Europe, we see that the trends that are coming is real estate asset performance data, building optimization transactions, and customer data. The reasons why people and companies are looking at PropTech is they hope to have improved efficiency, cost reduction, and more efficient decision making. So, what are we doing in Europe to drive innovation? I'm gonna jump into here. It's fresh, it's brand new. It's the collaboration between the European Space Agency and European PropTech Association, European Commission also, of course, where we have a special PropTech campaign and PropTech Kickstart campaign that is being designed, and it's running now it will be running as from the 14th of September, where the European Space Agency is giving funding and support specifically for European PropTechs who are developing services that exploit technologies that are being developed in the framework of the European Space Agency. So,
do you have, if I may chip in a question there, you mentioned this before, and I followed your big announcement a couple of days ago. Do you have examples of where PropTechs and the European Space Agency have already collaborated, or do you have sample business models so people really can get a grasp of what you refer to?
We don't have examples yet, Alexander, because while I told you it's fresh, I only did the webinar for the European member states last week. And the program here specifically for PropTech is starting to run as from the 14th of September. But I'm going to give you right away an answer. But let me tell you first that in the PropTech Kickstart phase, it's up to 64K per company. But then in the second phase, we have zero equity co-funding, which is up to 50% of the total project, and it goes up to 2 million euros. Now, when you ask me what can be done, what is the technology that's being used? Well, we look at satellite Earth observation, global navigation satellite systems, and you can see on the right-hand side what could be application examples. Well, positioning information of users that are navigating augmented reality applications. You got searches for local real estate assets based on location of the user. Monitoring of construction activity, but also, of course, the handling and the retrieval of data from the IoT devices that can be deployed in the field, right? To help formulate the digital twin of the site. Digital twin is also something very important coming up. So these are the applications that you can think about, and the different domains in which ESA will be investing in sharing economy, investment management, marketing, and of course, ComTech, construction tech. I think that there is a very big advantage. So,
can I just insert 1 second?
Yes, of course.
Because the whole idea of ESA is we invested quite a lot in space. But applications should not be only space. Applications should be another sector, like agriculture, which is a classic example, but like real estate as well. And real estate, you can use, for instance, let's say urban planning. Well, Copernicus, they can make the maps anytime. If something happens in the country, they can renew the maps. And that's, of course, something that should be used then by real estate. So these are the kind of collaborations that we should explore together. And congratulations that you work together with ESA. I think it's a very good thing.
And just to show you that I'm just not inventing things, and ESA neither, look at this one. On the right, top, bottom. There you see where goes the most funding to actually in this moment. And that is automated valuation, smart building, GPS, drones, data analytics, mapping, geospatial, urban mobility. So this is really the time, the perfect time, to have this cooperation between European Space Agency and the PropTech community. So that was my first point of saying we are driving European innovation here in the PropTech framework. Second thing is we have programs of the Commission that are specifically designed for this. We have a program, it's called Fast Track to Innovation. It's for PropTech startups and scale-ups also. It goes with a contribution of up to 3 million euros per company. So the goal is there to reduce the time from idea to the market and to get more private, to increase the private sector investment in research and innovation. So the Fast Track to Innovation program is on top of that, is for consortia. It means that you, as a PropTech startup or scale-up, you go together in a project with a big corporate in real estate. You both design a project, and for that project, you will be able to ask money up to 3 million from this program of the European Commission.
And this is the program. This is a non-refundable funding.
Yes, yes, of course, absolutely.
Exciting.
And that's not everything, because we have the EIC accelerator program, the European Innovation Council accelerator program, where you have proposals for funding for single startup or SMEs, yes, and there you have contributions between 0.5 and 2.5 million euros. And on top of that, Professor Aernoudt will certainly be able to come back to that later in this speech, equity up to 15 million euros per scale up. So these are really actions that are unique. They are being undertaken right now in Europe, and it's for PropTech. I must say, sometimes not only for PropTech, but in some cases, it's really specifically for PropTech, such as the ESA example, for example. Fourth element of driving innovation that I want to discuss with you, and also Professor Aernoudt will get back to that later, is the Green Deal and the EU next generation. Because the Green Deal, well, we know all that real estate is responsible for 38% of the emissions. We have 44% of energy consumption. So Green Deal will make us lower emissions, lower energy consumptions. But on top of that, it also will make big investments into doubling the annual renovation rate of our existing buildings. Right now in Europe, we are renovating buildings at a rate of 0.4% to 1%. We need to get to 2.5% to 3% to do that. The Green Deal will help us with that. And then in the second phase of this, the brand new EU Next Generation program, which is designed to build a more sustainable, resilient, fairer Europe, it aims at a boost of 1.85 trillion into the economy of Eurozone. And 25% of the EU budget will be spent on climate investments and additional funding for these types. So that's my message here today about this is this Green Deal and EU Next Generation is going to have a massive influence, positive one, on European PropTech. So what are we doing with the European PropTech Association? Well, first of all, it's 24 national networks in all the countries in Europe, and they represent a total of about 2,700 EU-based startups and scale-ups. I can say here to the public with very, very big confidence, we have a very, very good ecosystem of very high quality PropTech startups throughout Europe. Here's an overview of the European PropTech ecosystem. So you see the numbers where they are situated, and you also see that it's a bit everywhere. Okay, we have concentrations on some places, but you see that we are really active throughout Europe. So what are we doing? What are the goals here? We want to standardize the fragmented European PropTech market. We are creating a legal framework for that, and we are facilitating EU funding and subsidies, where we have an in-house team here of 15 people with Finova doing that. In the end, the most important thing, Alexander, is that we set up cross-border collaboration. You were talking about it earlier, and I can emphasize that here today. The only way to get PropTech relevant is on a global level is if all European countries are working together. And this we do by organizing for the European Commission the startup, what is called the Startup Europe Awards in PropTech, to recognize the best startups throughout Europe. So we have here like a stellar configuration where we have an association that is really helping the corporates, but also, of course, the startups and the scale-ups. And around that association, we have a lot of other people, and the CEOs of a lot of the big real estate companies, a lot of people around us also, thanks to the European Commission and, for example, Professor Rudy Aernoudt, an ecosystem that will really bring together all the actors that are propelling the PropTech ecosystem and the future of PropTech in Europe. So when we look at funding, because now we're going to the subject slightly where Professor Aernoudt is, of course, the biggest expert, look at PropTech. why do we talk about PropTech now? Well, first of all, there's 185 billion confirmed to be deployed in PropTech before 2025. Look at European PropTech. The figures are down on the slide. 2018, 1.53 billion. In 2019, 3.05 billion. It just doubled. I must tell you honestly, 24 and 25, you see that the line is a bit going down because that's just because not everything in forecast has been confirmed for those years. So what's interesting, Alexander, is that the number of deals is going down already since 2018. It was like that in 2019 and also in 2020. But the funding numbers, the total funding, is going up. So the market is maturing at this moment. But look where we came from. PropTech in Europe is early. It is where fintech was 7 years ago, and Professor Aernoudt, he knows everything about fintech. So why can we say that? Because the majority of the companies have less than 500K funding, 84%. The majority have less than 10 FTEs, and again, 55% are in a validation stage. So I would say this is the moment that we're going to grow. This is the moment to be investing in all these things. When you look at the 5 segments that we have defined within the PropTech, that's finance and invest, design and build, market transact, manage and operate, live and work, you see that there are 2 main domains where everyone, like I said, most of them are active. That is manage and operate and market and transact. So when you look at now at the global investment in real estate, in PropTech firms, there you see that the top 3 is smart building systems, online lending marketplaces, and online investment marketplaces and crowdfunding. So getting now to our European situation. In a general way of speaking, Q1 and Q2 of EU Ventures was not bad at all because Q1 started very strong. We had more than 8 billion in venturing in Europe. That's not only PropTech, of course, but at the same time, a slowdown has come. Of course, we all know why. Let me tell you the most important reasons. The EU startups and scale-ups and investors are tied to our internal EU market performance. We have liquidity challenges, so that makes that we have more follow-on deals. More than 70% of the deals in Q1 were follow-on deals. Follow-on deals means I have already invested in a company, and now this company has a bit of liquidity issues or challenges. I need to invest more. So at the same time, this has a consequence because new deals are taking longer and getting more difficult. And corporate investors are aligning their investment strategies with essential businesses. There's good news at the same time because when you look at venture capital investments as a percentage of GDP, we see an increase in most of the European countries. When you see on this slide, in orange are the totals, and the red line is what was the average between 2015 and 2019. So in all the countries, VC investments are up. So this is my day to be very positive, Alexander, so I'm going to continue. I have a very
I only know you very positive. Come on.
I'm going to continue. So we have a very positive outlook for European PropTech because companies are improving their readiness of infrastructure, right? The corporates with cash, they will even invest more because some valuations will decrease and it will be easier or better. You can do a good buy, let's say. And investors will not let their current invested startups fail, of course. So in that sense, the COVID-19 accelerates the need for PropTech solutions, and it accelerates exponential growth that was already happening. And to be very, very clear, the PropTech market was already booming, and COVID-19 is just accelerating. Let me take an example that I know very well because I have some companies in the office markets. The disruption in the office market, what is happening now, right? Well, landlords right now, they have to choose a role. They have to be, or they outsource the services to an operator and leave a lot of money on the table because other people will make your building attractive, right? Or become themselves product to service companies, or they partner closely with an ecosystem of providers that can help them to build a brand. So real estate is moving from being B2B to B2C. In the end, what landlords must do is sell a productive workspace and not an office. All of this is happening right now, just for that sector. So why do we know that investment in European PropTech will remain high? Well, it remains high for those PropTech companies that do 5 things. enable customers to act in the short term, that ensure a quick implementation, that can create a fast ROI, I mean 12 months, and that are able to focus on, here we go again, Alexander, collaboration within the same geography. So collaboration between the PropTechs in Europe is extremely important. And last but not least, it will be those who are aligned with the principles of the EU Green Deal and the Next Generation EU that will be driving and that will be receiving the investments. The last point here, when you look at the Renovation Fundraising Summit that was done, supported also by the PropTech Association, it was in July of this year. Only 23% of investors were there who had 100% dedicated focus on PropTech. So this is again a positive thing from 2020 onwards for our startups and scale-ups, because generalist VCs will invest in specific PropTech funds rather than creating their own new teams, right? You can see that very clearly where this is heading, and you see also the amounts that they are heading and increasing. And then I got good news for Germany right now, Alexander. So you have here the total PropTech funding for leading European countries. The UK is way ahead of everyone, let's say. And there comes in.
I thought we were talking about European countries.
Not going to go into that.
Sorry.
Germany is the first.
So let's. So Germany is there. France too. Switzerland, Netherlands. So this is just to show that, guys, we have a huge potential for all the countries here in Europe. And then before giving now the stage to Professor Aernoudt, let's look at this one. This shows the deals per stage. And when we look at the maturing PropTech industry, you see here that 50% of the funding is at the later stages. So it's in the dark purple, late VC. That's what you see. On top is angel and seed, and in the middle is early VC. So late VC. It really is a problem. Or let's say, no problem, I cannot say that. It's a challenge to which Professor Aernoudt has, without any doubt, a solution.
Thank you. Alexander, I would say, and everybody listening, please interrupt me, raise questions. It's more dynamic.
Yeah, then I take the opportunity to point to a question that has come from a speaker or from participants saying, what do you think about COVID-19 affecting the value creation process of real estate companies? Will COVID push PropTechs in terms of this?
Yes, but I think you need to look at two things. If the valuation itself, in some cases, is decreasing, and we are already seeing it. But again, coming back to what the subject is of today, everything which is in valuation of PropTechs who are aligned with the Green Deal will in the end be better off. Why? Because even with COVID-19, this situation at some point will come back, will rebound. Mr. Aernoudt is going to speak about that. So it can have an influence right now, as I was just saying, I'm not without any doubt. But let's look at what will happen in the next 12 months in terms of valuation. I think it's very tricky right now to do really prognosis or forecast on that in that matter. But I'm really confident, and I think that with the materials that I've just presented to you and the numbers, because I like numbers, and then I can you can be sure that we're not talking just in vain. I think we're going in a positive way.
Of course, Alexander, if the crisis leads to more realistic values, it will be easier for startups and scale-ups to raise money. So there's always a double bind at everything that happens. And that's why, in fact, my first slide is to quote Jean Monnet, who says that we have to change, but people only accept change when they're faced with necessity, and only recognize necessity when the crisis is upon them. So again, the future of the real estate industry, it will be, and I agree with Dirk, it's bright now, and this crisis is really something, an occasion not to miss. And of course, you all know what it means, and I spoke before about Schumpeter. It's this thing together, you know, it's making something which is smart, real estate, putting some creativity, entrepreneurship, and that's in fact the whole issue, the soul of PropTech. Now, again, I spoke about the game changes. This crisis made that things are different. people look different to their building. The building is not something where it's at a certain spot, it's something that we use. Young people don't want to own a building, they want to use a building. The Z generation will be users of building, not owners of building. And that's, of course, very important to see in the PropTech how to cope with that. But again, PropTech is in the core of this whole movement. So I'm sure that PropTech is now going to shake the whole real estate, shake the economy. And if I say that, I would use this slide to say to be so positive, because if you look where real estate is not the best. And you see real estate is the fifth on my slide. They're only at 20% digitalization. If you look to travel agencies, they are at 50%, communication 50%. So real estate should be the first one there, to be the most digitalized sector. So
I fully agree, and if I may chip in, travel industry, for example, they were put under pressure by client demands. In the real estate sector, we saw markets where the landlords had more power because there was more demand than offers, and in this respect, there was no pressure, as you put it, to innovate. Can you relate a little bit? I mean, to the pressure. I mean, there's pressure from COVID, maybe pressure from changed client demands, but I also see, put it mildly, guidance from the policymaker at the European Commission to really steer up the old real estate economy in order to start to innovate.
Well, there's of course pressure from the European Commission, but it's not only the Commission, because what is the Commission saying now? The two priorities for the future, and Dirk spoke about this big amount. Altogether, we speak about something like 12% of the GDP of Europe. That's massive. But these amounts, the priority will be digital and green, because green is what we all want. Nobody wants to say this planet is polluted, just leave it like that and give it to the next generation. Everybody say, we need to be digital. This is the future. So if then you're at the core and the Commission is there not to say we want that, but we facilitate that. We want to facilitate the sector going in that direction. And as you rightly point out, Alexander, at the moment that you have buildings and everybody's queuing to rent and the rent is raising, it's a different situation than if part of your buildings are empty and you should think about how to do it. The world afterwards will not be different. If you look to the European Commission, we have 55 buildings in Brussels. For the moment, they're all almost empty because with COVID, it's very hard to go to the office. Wow. So let's think about what we're doing with all this infrastructure. And the future is green, the future is digital, and therefore you need creativity. And in my view, this is, let's say, a situation not to miss. And to all people listening, you should now take a piece of paper and say, what are the 2-3 next creative things I'm going to do to make my business plan more solid and more sustainable? And that's in fact the big question we should all raise. If no more questions, I will continue, because this is of course a slide which I don't like. I should skip that one. Unicorns, the big growth in PropTech, they are not in Europe. The unicorns, they are almost all United States and China. So I count on you, and I find this conference today at the right moment. I count on you to say, let's make these big scale-ups and these unicorns, let's make them together in Europe. And that's about money. And now it's not speaking about subsidies, I'm speaking about the whole market. And what you see is that later stage is the issue. I take the figures from 2019, so there's no COVID inside for the moment. 2019, there's 34 times more scale up money in the United States than in Europe. So if a company is looking for 20, 30, 40 million, they're almost obliged to go to that. So that's why we need these big funds. That's why we need to have big funds here in order to follow, because, as Dirk pointed out, there are almost 3,000 starters in PropTech. I want out of these starters that they grow, that they develop, and expand in Europe. That's what we're looking for, and that's of course what we should do. And where are the problems? There are 3 problems. The first one, to get money, and even in Germany, you have a lot of organizations giving you 100,000, 500,000 to start. The beginning is quite easy. The first problem is what we call the first equity gap. Looking for 1 million, 2 million. Because too small for a VC fund and too big for a business angel. This is the first gap. The second gap is, once you're big and you're looking for 10 million to 25 million, there's almost nobody here. And the third one is, if you are successful, then you have to go to the stock. And we know that for the moment, it's quite limited to have it. So there are three problems, and the three problems we should solve if you want that out of PropTech, which is valid for other sectors as well, those startups will be translated into scale-ups in Europe. And this is a challenge we should all take together in the future. And you see, some of this you will see, you all recognize them. You have the KUKA from Germany, but you recognize a lot of digital companies. Let's start with Skype. Skype was looking, it's a European company looking for 150 million. You can find in Europe, you move. And so we have that 45% of these companies left Europe, and of course, you leave intellectual property, and you leave, of course, what you have been developed. So this is a big issue, what we should work on, the scale-up gap and the digital gap. That's in fact what I call then as an economist, the market failure. And when there is a market failure, the policy should not take over, but should facilitate the market to work. And then of course comes Corona, it hits one case. We don't know what will happen. Will it be the green line was without Corona? The blue one was if there's not a second hit, and the red one if there is a second hit. And I put the figures for Germany, but for every country, the relation is the same. It means if there is a second hit, you see that the decrease in 2020 will be bigger, and the increase in 2021 will be lower. This means if everything goes well, perhaps we need 1.5 years to get back on track. If things goes bad, the second wave might take 2 years. And that's why the Commission invents everything that Dirk said. The Commission is putting money. It's not because the Commission wants at any price to spend money. It's because we want to recover as soon as possible and put the economy back on track. And then you have the figures, you all know it's quite important as figures. And then we say again, it's about green, but we should stop by thinking it's green or it's economy. No, it is green economy. And green is part of the economy, and green might be a very good driver of the economy, and that's what we should see in the future. You see, I gave some examples. Real estate, it's on the crossroad of this green transformation and this digital investments. And there you see some examples of projects that are going to be launched within the Green Deal once the Gold Green Deal is adopted. And you know, everything is in the process now for the budget for the next years. You want to make your life simple. I know in the Commission you don't have a good reputation for that, but you see all these programs, all the financial instruments 2040, 2020, and some of these acronyms you might recognize, Alexander, and most of you. Well, everything will be put into one basket, which is called InvestEU. InvestEU will have worked through the financial intermediaries, to the bank, to the venture capital fund, to the national promotion banks, such as KfW in Germany. And then we have 4 windows. You see the 4 windows on the right side, which I'm going to explain more in detail now. It's one about sustainable infrastructure. It's one about research, innovation, and digitalization. It's one about SMEs, and it's one about the social investments and skills. There's a 5th one, which I blocked in red because the 5th one didn't get to the council, so it's not sure if this one is going to take place or if you have to reschedule the budget partly to the first 4 one. But you see, if you look to the 4 one, give me one which is not relevant for PropTech. There's no one. They're all relevant. And you see, he's speaking about a very important amount. So that's in fact, I'm speaking about, as you said, Alexander, this is not about grants, this is not about subsidies, this is about financial instruments, such as venture capital, guarantees, subordinated loans, etc. And if you look again, what is the impact of Corona on these companies? Well, you see that the pre-seed and the Series A's starting, they have a problem of cash burn. And if you see to the right part of my slide, a lot of companies will not make it. Let's be honest in that. But the only scale, the only phase that really has a problem is the Series B+, which we call the scale-ups. And there you see that the cash burn will be very hard to manage. So the problem was big, explained, and it will get bigger. And that's in fact why we as a Commission want to set up new things. And one of the new things is Escalar. And now if you're not concentrated for the moment, please concentrate 1 minute. If you got that one, you know what Escalar is about. Escalar is about European Scale-Up Action for Risk Capital. I set up a fund. Imagine I set up a fund for PropTech in Frankfurt or whatever. I have a fund, I put 50 million euro equity, out of which some is private money, some is public money, to the European Investment Fund or to KfW or to BP France, whatever. If I do that, this is my equity for my funds. On top of that, I can have quasi-equity. which is the same amount, which is money, which is not pari passu for the technical specialists amongst you. So this means the return will be capped. In case of loss, we are paid back first. And the idea, we are now running a pilot scheme, which is now running. And the idea would be that we raise private money, such like pension funds, from 2021 onwards. This is, of course, things we have to make operational. So see, to make it easy, we have investees in the venture capital fund. Half of it is financed by classical equity, half is quasi-equity. But if you do so, for those who don't have enough about technical issues now, you can combine what we call now the new buzzword, blending of financial instruments. The private equity, public equity, and on top of that, we do escalar as a quasi-fund. Now, you should say, why should I take a quasi-capital? Because today a fund hardly finds money on the financial markets. And if you see, again, for the specialist, if you make a good fund, you will have leverage on return. So it's not only more volume, but a good fund will be more rentable. If your fund makes a return of, let's say, 12%, but half of it you can get to 4%, then the return for the equity payers is much higher. And that's in fact what we want to do, because that way we can attract risk people who want equity, and we can attract more risk averters who want to go for the quasi equity. And the idea is to double it. I want to finish with some reflections. And I hope, Alexander, you have still some time for discussions. The world is moving. It's not all about location. The Green Deal is a perfect opportunity. And as I say, the opportunity is illimited for a PropTech. These days has no boundaries. Scale up, have you seen, it's high. It's on top of the political agenda. And real estate, of course, is on the edge of both. So I would say, don't miss the opportunity. PropTech has a huge potential. And on that context, I find it very good that you do this kind of conferences. And the floor is back to Alexander.
Thank you very much. We have still 7-8 minutes left for questions. So I look at the participants list. So if you have any questions, please chip in. I know Adam Pierce certainly has a question on his mind. So Adam, go ahead if you want. In the meantime, when you presented this across Europe, what's your feeling? Which of the geographies are the most active when it comes to linking green and technology?
Well, of course, to the north of Germany, we have a very good example, which is Denmark. And we know that Denmark, since a long time, the green economy is real economy. If you look what they do, it's part of their culture. And I think what we should achieve is that the green economy is not something marginal that you add to the economy. It should become the mainstream. And I think in Europe now, there's not one country that's against the Green Deal. Nobody is against green. The fact is now that we have to integrate into our mechanisms, and even the national member states, and at regional level, we have to rethink our financial instruments and see how can we integrate green. I will not make a list of the best countries. Of course, I quoted Denmark because it's quite known as a country, but I see that every country is now seeing how to do it. Because if you want to become sustainable, and that's the idea is not to have a quick recovery and then falling back in 2 years' time. The idea is having something sustainable. If it is sustainable, you should get out of the conflict between ecology and economy. And you should find subtle ways to combine them. And they are there. The green economy, you have a huge investment in the Commission, but the Commission did all the investment gaps. That's why if you say this big amount of the Green Deal, it's not something like that. Huh? We try to see where are the gaps, what has to be invested in the green economy to get there. And so again, this is something that every member state and every region should look at and see how to integrate into our regional and national business model. And I can see that most of the member states are now looking how to do it concretely. It's not only about subsidies, because what we want to create, if you want good value for public money, then you need leverage. This means if €1 public money is invested, you should make through the investment system that it leads to a multiplier where you have 4, 8, 10 euro investments. And that's how we set up the schemes now. We always try to see what will be the leverage impact of the public money. If not, public money is not efficient.
Thank you. Adam Pierce, as I anticipated, has a question. He has raised his hands, and Sean, if you can make it happen that we can hear or maybe even see Adam,
Indeed.
that'd be great.
Yeah.
Hi, Adam.
Hi
Good to
guys.
have you.
Hi. Yeah. Thanks very much. We've covered some very interesting ground in the presentation. A lot of ground in a short amount of time. For those of us that want to dig deeper into a lot of the points and the funding structures that you mentioned, what's the contact point or the resource point that you would now point us to, so that following your presentation today, we can get into the finer detail? Is there a specific reference point you would point us to?
Yeah, well, everything which concerns PropTech and what we have been presenting today, you can send in all your requests for information through the channel of European PropTech Association.
Okay, excellent.
During the commission, you should know that we are now in a time where we are discussing about the budget for the next 10 years. Of course, first we need to have this budget. You know, the discussions have been taking place in the Council of the Parliament. You know that our President Ursula von der Leyen is going to give a State of the Union, as we call it, next week, Wednesday, to the Parliament, which of course you can all follow. And at that moment, she's going to fix out the priorities. Once we have that, we can concretize in our complete program. For instance, when I spoke about Escala, for the moment, it was a pilot scheme. Well, after that, we want to make a big scheme. If you speak about the venture capital elements, we already have these programs which are going to run through calls to public information. So of course, everything can be found to our website of Europa, Europa-EU. So there you find all the technical things, and you know that in every country you have special agencies who try to explain exactly what we are doing in Europe, and we have them, of course, in Germany as well, a lot of agencies working on that, private and local.
And as for dissemination of information, also we work a lot on that at the level of every country with the national PropTech associations, and we do at the European level with the European PropTech Association. That's why we always ask Mr. Professor Aernoudt to be with us, to give these presentations and to enlighten us with information about what is coming. And those we are always well placed to guide you through that. And I encourage you to follow also the European PropTech Association, the publications that we do, and the moments that we are speaking, like at this great event here today at World PropTech 2020.
This is a great closing statement, but I do have one question which is really on my mind, because you only covered it a little bit. It's the next generation. You said it's something very new. It was marked in yellow, and I know it's something that's really driving you, Professor Aernoudt. Can you, as a closing statement, maybe the next two minutes maximum, give us your view? Why should we be confident that everything that we do now is not a burden for the next generation, but as the opposite, that the European Commission is working on a setup that actually makes us stronger in the future?
Well, I think what we have to think about now in the Commission, what we want, and again, from a crisis we should learn. One thing we learned from the crisis is that Europe is not resilient. We depend from certain crucial strategic products, we depend from other countries outside Europe. We need to be resilient. To be resilient means that we have to rethink our economy. We should say, is it normal that a lot of production has been that went away? Should we not think about bringing industry back? Should we look at the future? And therefore, for those who are interested, the college adopted yesterday a foresight report, which is a report means looking forward, what do we want Europe to be in 6 years? And then the main topic is how to get Europe more resilient, meaning strategic autonomy, meaning the green economy, meaning the digital economy. And so for those who are interested to go into that report, you will see everything you want to see on the field of raw materials, for instance. And indeed, the next generation will be a generation that Europe is very solid Europe. And I think next week that the president is going to explain, where do we want to go with Europe. And I think it's now a right moment for all of you to look at that, to invest, and to see, are we in the priorities, which are not our priorities, which are your priorities as well, which are the priorities for the future of the economy, and which what we have to do for the next generations to give them a solid economy based on real values and good values.
Thank you very much. We believe in Europe. I can speak for Blackburn, but I can also speak for my fellow colleagues at the European PropTech Association. That's why we support European PropTech House and the initiative to really have a dialogue open with the European Commission. Thanks again for joining us today, for being in this interactive session, Professor Rudy Aernoudt and Dirk Paelinck. Thanks to Brussels, and you know that you're going to move on to a media session. One of the participants is thanking you, and if there are any further questions, direct them directly to Dirk or Rudy, or if you want any assistance from us, please let us know. In this sense, stay healthy, have a great day, and hope to talk soon, maybe next time physical, somewhere in Europe. Thank you.
Thank you, Alexander.
Thank you, Alexander. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.